Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday night. Welcome back to my little live stream program. And I want to thank you all for coming, for giving me your time, for putting up with me. So here I am. Good to have you. Tonight, in about 2 hours from now, Rocky Stucci's Situation Room. I will be on with Rocky tonight, as usual. And we'll be tackling I don't know what yet. We've got about 10 topics lined up for tonight. We'll see which one comes out and which one actualizes itself as we progress through the night. As you know, Rocky and I many days sit and do a little agenda planning for the show. And we say, well, let's talk about this and this and that and that, and let's hit that. But let's not go too much into that or too much into this, but let's do that. And when we've got it all lined up, it's all on our computer screens, bullet pointed and all of that, how much time we want to spend in each one. That's like studying for a test. And then you get to the test and the answer is all different. It's like I had a seminary professor when I was in seminary. We spent the whole semester. I'm talking not quarters or trimesters, whole semester, half of the year, going through that whole syllabus and taking notes. And he asked one question on the test. He said, the test is just going to be one question. We got to that question on test day, and that question was about 500 words long, a paragraph. And it basically covered every topic that was in, and every guy in that class actually failed the test. And so he had to re-give it. He had to restructure. So that's kind of how it is with Rocky and I on radio. We've got an agenda, and then we hit something totally different and go off on it for a half an hour to an hour. So that's coming up at 11 p.m. Central Standard Time. It is now 9:05 Central Standard Time, depending on where you are. If you're over there in Australia, I know it's like 14 hours difference, I think, depending on what part of Australia you're in. So my friends over there, it's already like afternoon over there, something like that. I can't do math. Math is hard. So I wish I had hair to twirl my finger, and math is hard. So anyway, there we go. Evening, everybody. I'm going to say hello as we kind of go through. I got Sean Holt. Is that Sean Holt, my friend, my personal buddy, Sean Holt? I don't know if you've ever been here before, Sean, but man, it's good to see you in here. And I just want to say hello to some of you that are here in the chat room. And Nigel, good to see you, brother. And of course, Audrey, my lovely Audrey. She is our Man Friday, if you don't know. And calling her Man Friday, of course, is absolutely 100% metaphoric, because she's the farthest thing from a man, if you know what I mean. So she helps us out in both the Situation Room and here on my shows. And lovely to have you here, Audrey, as usual. And let's see. What did you say, Nigel? You're freaked out about something? No, that was something else. I misread it. Oh, there you are. Your answer. Absolutely freaked in. Oh, okay. Something totally different. Leslie, good to see you, darling. Nice to have you here. Topper, great to have you in. Brianna, nice to have you as well. And let's see who else as we scroll down. Who are my early birds here tonight? Susie Q, how you doing? She's my Ensign Rand, if you all have that reference and know it. So there we go. I'm just scrolling down through just to see who all is here. And I did see Sean, and it's a great to have you, Sean. Donna Bell, nice to have you. Wow, there's a lot of talking going on here before I even got here, I think. Eri, I think that's how you say it, E-R-I. Eri, Armin, nice to see you. Iowa X, good to have you. Iowa, did you and I clear this up once before? Aren't you the same Iowa X, if I remember correctly? Back when He Who Shall Not Be Named and I used to do radio back a long time ago in the MIRC and the IRC channels, and we do chats. If you know what I'm talking about, that's way back. Jason Rios, good to see you. And let's see, we're catching up to the current here. Joey Aragon lives. Good to see you. Long live the great Scotty Roberts, he says. I agree with that. May I live long and may I prosper. And let's see. I was pretty sure I saw Sean Holt. Yeah, there he is. Yeah, that's Sean. That's his picture. Sean and I go way back, by the way, to the Renaissance Festival days. I've known Sean for at least 15 years, I want to say, Sean, maybe longer than that. So it's nice to have you here. I'm glad you're in here. Let's see. Nigel asked a question in the chat, but it disappeared. Ask it again, Nigel. And by the way, folks, if you have a question that you want me to see, because I tend to talk and just go off and get lost in talking, and I don't always look over at the chat room, which is over to the right side of my screen. If you put it in all caps, I should at least see it easier. So there's Sean. Yep, about 15 years. Good to see you, brother. And folks, to you, I raise my mug of coffee. Why you're drinking coffee at 9 o'clock at night, someone may well ask. I got to tell you, folks, I drink coffee whenever I can get it. Now, that's not why I don't sleep well. My not sleeping well is, I told you, I've been an insomniac for years. I go to bed. I'm a night owl. And then I go to bed. I toss and turn all night. And then I wake up at the wee hours before the sun rises. So I'm at the ass crack of dawn waking up. That's been the way I've always been. And sometimes it catches up with me, and I have a day where I sleep all day. And then I have days where I don't. So, Jason, good to have you drinking coffee with me. This happens to be a Caribou brand I am drinking tonight. So, it's a leftover from when my daughters, Abby and Bryn, were visiting a couple of weeks ago. And I got them Caribou because they like Caribou coffee. So, and there's my lovely wife, Rainey, slipping into the room. You want to come and say hi?
Not really.
Not really?
Hi, everybody.
She generally comes by quietly and flashes me to disrupt me and take my mind off of what I'm doing, which is usually pretty okay for me. Except I can't do anything about it when I'm doing live radio. So, Sean Holt is in the chat room. Sean Holt says hello to Rainey.
Hi, Sean.
There you go. I don't know if you can hear her. This is a directional mic. So she said, long time no see. Say hey to KJ. And hi, KJ. I don't know if she's there. She may be in this background somewhere. So I love good coffee. Yeah, I do too. You know, I've got my small child entered the room. So you're going to hear a little ambient sound from the background, but they'll clear out of here in a minute. That's okay. We're still in the introductory phase of what's going on. Now, folks, I debated what I wanted to talk about tonight. Did I want to get into politics? You know, as Rocky and I talk about, because we do the situation when we talk politics and current events every day, there are days we are so weary of talking about politics. It's become a pain in the ass. And not just a pain in the ass, but absolute wearisome tedium to keep talking about politics. Now, 15 years ago when I was talking about politics, even 10 years ago when I talked about politics at the inception of the Obama administration, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed taking down the Obama administration because I disagreed with his political ideologies. But I will clear up one thing and make this as a point of record, and it will be on this show and archives as long as the internet exists before, I don't know, the grid comes down and we all are cast back into the dark ages, is that when I talked about Obama, I made it very clear that I disagreed with his political ideologies, but that I found the man to be somebody that I should respect. I found the office to be something I should respect. Now, people, I heard the rudiments of that argument that says, well, how can you respect somebody if he's tearing down our nation? That was a political belief. That was an ideology that was pervading. And I had a big problem with saying, with separating the man, or a lot of people had a big problem with separating the man from the ideology. And so you would ask the question, and people even pose this to me, as far-fetched a question as this is. People would pose that hypothetical question that said, well, if you could go back in time and kill Hitler as a baby so the Third Reich never rose, wouldn't you do it? And I'm like, what kind of stupid-ass question is that? I don't think people, for their political ideologies, especially in a constitutionally limited republic like we have, you don't condemn the people. You condemn the ideology. And I often said, you know what? I will respect the office of the president. I would defend the office of the president. I would defend the president even if I disagreed with him politically. Do you know why? Because he's my president. He's the president of my country, my nation. I don't care what he brings to the table when it comes to respecting the individual as a human being. I never had a problem with Obama being black and being in the office. I said that people were accusing me of, well, you just don't like Obama because he's black. And I said, I don't care if he's pink with purple polka dots. I don't agree with his political ideologies. Therefore, I will resist him. And it's like, do you remember way back then that, hey, Jeremy Hansen, how you doing? Do you remember way back then that people were saying that, or that Rush Limbaugh, who I listened to a lot more regularly back at the beginning of the Obama era, that he said something like, I hope he fails at what he's doing. That was like the day after the inauguration. And everybody took him to task for that, despite the fact that the same next breath he described what he meant. He says, not that the man is a personal failure. He says, I hope that he fails at his political agendas and implementing them because I think they will destroy the country. Now, that was totally separate from a respect for the man in the office and the office itself. That's the way I felt at the time. And that's the way I am now. You know what? I support President Trump. I voted for him, and I'm going to damn well vote for him again. That doesn't mean I'm a mindless, brainless, numb-headed sycophant who is going to, it's Trump. I'm part of the cult of Trump. Oh, I worship Trump. Oh, and Trump be my trust. It's nothing like that. I happen to agree with the things he's doing for the country. Does that mean I agree with everything he says or does that spills out of his mouth? No. I think sometimes I wish, there are days I sit back and I listen to some of the things President Trump says and I go, I wish Ronald Reagan were alive. You know, that's the way I feel about Trump sometimes. But I don't have a problem with him. You know, I just got done talking to somebody online just before I came in here, answering a question about the racism of Donald Trump. And I said, you know what? I don't find him to be racist. I said, just because some of the people he has criticized recently, 4 people out of how many millions of people who live in America, he criticized 4 freshman congresswomen that were holding out and touting a socialist agenda. He resisted them. And he doesn't always say things the way I would say them, or Ronald Reagan would say them, or somebody who maybe is not a blue-collar billionaire would say them. But he said what he said. And then he came back and he clarified. He's got to do that. I think whatever you want to say about Trump, that does not make him a racist. Just because the people are people of color doesn't mean that people of color can't be stupid, idiots, or dicks that need criticism. And it's come to the thing, and it's all started in the Obama administration, where, and remember, I said I wasn't going to talk politics tonight. So I'm just talking some theory. Then I want to get into what I want to talk about tonight. So don't worry. The whole show's not going to be politics. That's what Rocky and I do. I do sometimes. But my whole practice, my mode of operation with Donald Trump is that I voted for him because I believed in what he said he was going to do. And I've been watching him do it. He's accomplishing. Somebody said, oh, what has Trump ever accomplished? Somebody asked me. So when I looked it all up, in a Facebook post, it took me 4 separate posts to bullet point his accomplishments. Now, not everybody would call those. Somebody said then responding, well, I wouldn't call those all accomplishments. It's like, shut up. Hashtag shut up. You know, I've had it up to my eyeballs with this stuff. So this is why I don't even know where I was going, other than to say I'm going to bring it back around and say Rocky and I sometimes grow really weary and tired of all the political shenanigans, game playing, bullshit, all of that stuff. I'm so tired of it. And it's so wearisome having to fight it and having to, and you know, the funny thing is, it's that people are vocal. That's why it's out there. It's not because they are the overwhelming majority. It's the ones that are, and do you realize, I kind of likened it to smoking. You know, if you were a smoker and they started imposing all the laws where you couldn't smoke inside a bar or a restaurant, then you had to move it outside, and then it had to be 25 feet from the entryway of any building. And it was almost like you'd go out on the street to light up, and you'd take your cigarette and your lighter, and you'd kind of, I hope nobody sees me doing this, you know, because it's so socially unacceptable now. This is the way people have been about Trump, but I think they're coming out of the Trump closet now because they were afraid to say anything. Why? Because the resistance was so damned vocal and so demeaning and so attacking. It's like the kids wearing their MAGA hats and having some guy in a coffee shop twice their size and age knock their hat off their head. What are they going to do? And so people were intimidated. You tell me that is not political intimidation in this country. And anyway, I could go on and talk about democracy, how we're a constitutionally limited republic that has democracy, not a democracy. I could go on and talk about how the electoral college elimination could be very devastating to our country because you're going to have three major cities that are basically going to decide any election. And there's no representation. We are a constitutionally representative limited republic. Boom. Period. Done. There. Now I've jumped all over the map as far as politics goes without really getting deep into politics. And that's not even what I was really going to talk about tonight, but I had to make mention of that. All of that is a preface to say, join Rocky Stucci and me tonight at 11, an hour and 40 minutes from now. I've now used up the first 20 minutes of my show talking about politics. But you know what? I don't care. I can do anything I want. I can go as long as I want, as long as I don't run into Rockies in my show. So there you go. So I'll say it again. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. Let's move on. Now, I wanted to talk, and I said tonight was going to be kind of I couldn't figure out. I was talking to Rocky. I said, I don't know what to call this. I said, I want to do some more paranormal talk. I want to do some interesting topics. I mean, I used to talk radio every day. I did radio 5 days a week. Well, I do now too. But sometimes you're stumped for topics. See, what do I want to talk about tonight? Do I want to talk about gardening, which my wife and I were doing just 10 minutes before I came in here and got on my computer? Do I want to talk about white linen shirts? Do I want to talk about haircuts? Do I want to talk about politics or cars? I don't talk about cars because I don't know cars. By the way, great series. If you want to see it, go to Netflix. Jerry Seinfeld. I don't know what you think of him. He's got a series called Comedians in Cars Drinking Coffee. Fantastic series. Just kind of a reality thing where he has a different cool car, collectible car every week. And he goes and picks up another very famous comedian, takes him out for coffee or breakfast, and they just talk about stuff. He interviews him. But it's not an interview. He just talks. They talk. Great show, by the way. So tonight, in asking Rocky, this morning I talked to him and I said, I don't even know what to talk about. I don't know how to categorize what I do. Because it comes down to this. I know what to talk about. I know what I have fun talking about, what I have fun sharing. I know what I've talked about since 1999 when I first started doing radio. By the way, I was doing, as many of you know, doing paranormal radio in 1999. That's 20 years ago, folks. So I don't not know what to talk about. I just come to the day of and I'm like, what am I going to talk about tonight? And sometimes you just turn on the mic and the lights and you just go. And you just say, I got so much stuff I don't need, and sometimes you got to research things. I've got a couple of things called up and a couple of things in my notes Does that mean I'm going to hit that? No, not necessarily. And so Rocky said, why don't you just do like a, like a daily journal? I said, hey, how about that? And that's when I posted that this morning. I made the little graphic that says Scotty's Daily Journal. That's not the name of the show or anything. But it's going to give you an idea of where I want to go with things. I could crack open my journal and start reading things. Like right now, I could take this journal right here. This journal, like my hat's back there, the one on the wall that's I wore a hole in. This journal's been around the world. And if I flip open, I'm going to flip open to something familiar. I've read this to you before. If I can find it. I got stuff in here from Egypt, flattened flowers. I've got the stuff from what I think could very possibly have been the plant that is known as the burning bush. We talked about that when I was doing Exodus reality readings. And we were going up, if you didn't hear it, we were going up the side of a mountain in the Sinai called Serabit el-Khadim. And the guys that were guiding us up the mountain, young bucks, going to school, football-looking types. And their father was the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities dude who ran that whole site, that whole area in the Sinai. I'm looking for a particular entry here as I'm talking, so never mind me. But as we're going up the mountain, me in my hiking boots and him in his shorts and his flip-flops climbing a mountain. So we get up to as we're on our way up, he saw this bush there, and it's all over. It's like sagebush here. And he says, oh, you see this bush? He says, this, very valuable to we Bedouin. And I said, really? I said, what's so valuable about it? And now you might remember me talking about this. And he said, it is, you gather it up, he says, and you bundle it and you burn it, and it never goes out. He says, it will burn for weeks. And I said, really? And it's the oils and the planters. And so I clipped some of it and stuck it here in my book. I also had a piece of bulrush in here that I took out a while back. That's no longer in here. It was just getting mashed because it hung over the edges of the book. But there, now I found it and I closed it again. So what immediately came to mind is Serabit el-Khadim is the mountain that both John and I believe to be the biblical Mount Sinai, where Moses met with God, the burning bush and all of that. And now he's talking about a certain bush that grows there wild all over the place that never burns out. Is this what he was talking about? Don't know. Don't know for sure. I don't want to just discount the miracles of God if that's indeed what it was. But at the same time, if it was an actual thing that happened, could God use a natural burning plant to be the burning bush? Maybe. All right, here it is. There's a couple of things. I got a couple of pages here I want to read you. And this is, these are my notes right here from little sketches I drew of things when we were there. And this is dated January 31st of 2013. Let's see. Audrey, you have carrots and pineapples. Interesting. Let me just go back here and see if I've missed anything anybody said. Just think of the goodness in all of that salt and oil. Yeah. Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Going back through, seeing if there's anything I might have missed. Okay, if not, let me get into this. I'm going to read this for a second. So I thought I'm going to pull out my journal and read something. Now, I'm reading this only because it's familiar to you. And you've heard me talk about this before. There's actually a couple of different things here. One is January 31st of 2013. We're at the Valley of the Nobles, which is in Luxor. It's on the eastern side of the Theban Mountains, which is a low, small mountain range. And on the other side of that is the Valley of the Kings. About 15 minutes, you can drive all the way down to the end and all the way around, and you can get into the Valley of the Kings on the other side of this ridge. And it rises up out of the desert. It's not like, don't think Rocky Mountains when I say mountain range. It's just really run for miles, this range of low mountains that you can drive around to the other side, you know. And we were at the tomb of Ramos, the vizier, a friend to Amenhotep, son of Hapu, who happens to be John's guy for Moses, his candidate. And I said, I looked at a relief of Ramos, unaware that it was him. Flash of tears and a chill, just momentarily. Not tears of emotion, but of presence and logistical, proximal awareness. And then it was gone. It was just a flash. And you remember how I told you of the one vision that I know I had? I don't do visions. I don't have visions. I'm not weird. Sorry, anybody that has them. I just called you weird. I don't think that way. I'm not wired that way. I've been very skeptical of that kind of stuff my whole life. But I had the one vision in Egypt. Now, I found this, and I'd forgotten completely about this. A few minutes later, I sat in the quiet in the outer pillared chamber and attempted to clear my mind just to see what might come my way. It was very quiet. Then a mental image in my mind's eye of 3 robed, shaved-headed priests in long white robes aside me, but not aware of me. Just a flash, and then they were gone. Then when looking at the relief of the man against which I now knew was Ramos himself, I saw him seated on a throne, then a man reaching around from behind with a golden dagger. There was no violence, with only the ever so slightest hint of possible malevolence, and then it was gone. John told me later that there's nothing about a violent end for Ramos. And I said, I'll need to mull this over to see if it's anything other than mental images and tricks of my imagination. Which is why, by the way, folks, I've told you all when I read cards and stuff, I don't do the psychic thing because I don't trust my own mind. I have a very active, overly creative, over-imaginative mind. I see pictures in my head all the time for things I want to create, things I want to write, things I want to paint or draw. And so if I'm doing psychic stuff, I don't trust that stuff. I'm like, I just made that up out of my head. So, yeah, goosebumps, says Susie Q. And so I don't know if there was anything to that, but I drew a little dagger here and my notes, and I said, well, this is kind of what I saw in my head. But now it goes on. That was the 31st. So 5 days later is when I had that big experience at the tomb of Senenmut, which I told you about, that tied into an experience I had regarding the death of Philip Coppens about a month earlier. And this is where I wrote, I'm at tomb TT 353, which is one of Senenmut's tombs, and it's outside Hatshepsut's temple of Deir el-Bahri, and they're in Luxor, and it's just down a little ways from the tombs of the nobles. And his tomb is down in the gully, so to speak, that's outside the ramps of her funerary temple, the Pharaoh Queen Hatshepsut. And it's one of 2 of his unused tombs. And I wrote this down after I had that experience. I said, I'm sitting in the sand outside the unused tomb of Senenmut, TT 353. I stood in this little natural grotto and was overwhelmed with emotion. Not sure precisely why. Tears, many tears. I'm not even sure if Senenmut is Moses. Not even so sure that Moses even exists as I thought. But someone is here. Someone grabbed my emotions, and I don't want to let go. I don't want them to let go. And that's all I wrote. And I just did a little line drawing of the little grotto where I was sitting. Now I look at this in my journal, and some of these things I've written about in these experiences. And those of you who know me well know I am not given to weird personal experiences. I've experienced a lot of weird things, but not within myself. I don't see myself as psychic. I don't see myself as being open and susceptible to the susceptible. I'm open, but I'm not susceptible. And so I read these things back, especially that one at the Tomb of Ramos, which I'd totally forgotten about. And I had all kinds of things happen over there. I'm going to tell you this is that even in the 4th century BCE, Manetho, who was an Egyptian historian, wrote of Egypt. That is it's the land of the gods, the demigods, and spirits of the dead. This is what he wrote back then, 2,400 years ago. You step into the sand in Egypt, and if you've got an open mind, you open your mind to stuff. Even when I was over at John and Maria's archaeological site, Gebel El Silsila, down about an hour south of Luxor on the Nile, I went off one day all by myself, walking a few miles down the West Bank while they were working on a dig over on the East Bank. And I stopped in all these shrines that had been put up thousands of years ago. And they're spaced out. There's about 35 of them all along the West Bank over a 2.5 mile stretch. And I was going through and I was taking pictures of all of them, taking detail. I was doing videos, and some of you who followed my last trip there saw some of those videos back in, I think that was 2015 when I was there last. I should have been there. I was supposed to go 2 other times. I was supposed to go about the time I had the heart attack and the open heart surgery. I was supposed to be in Egypt. So it was probably good I didn't go during that period. So, and I haven't been back since all of that stupid stuff happened. Wanting to go this fall, but we'll see how it goes. But as I'm going down through there, I'm taking pictures and I'm doing video. And I had a fresh battery in my camera. That battery will last for a week, by the way, doing videos, doing pictures and stuff like that. I was only 11 shrines down the way. Some of them I just took a few pictures. Others I stopped at and I did a little video, 2 of them. And I'm talking 2-minute long videos, not hours. And I get into shrines 11 and 12, which had the wall knocked out between them. And if you've seen some of the pictures I've had, it's the one up on the cliff off the Nile, and there's 4 little cutouts in the stone, entrances to these shrines. I'm on the very end. And my camera stops. I experience some of the same things we experience at very highly charged paranormal locations. And so I had that going on. I had to walk all the way back to the boat and recharge my batteries, get the one that was charged up and replace it. By the way, when I got back to the boat, there was the thing turned back on. So, but it's neat because you're out there. It's not touristy. You're a million miles from nowhere, and there's a couple of villages around, but they're not, on top of you. Just walking out in the dirt and the rocks. If I had gone up the little slope and just started walking west, I'd be in the Sahara Desert. But I'm right on the Nile there, and so I experienced some of that stuff there. The website for Maria Nilsson and John Ward regarding their dig. This is the location Scotty's talking about. You put up friendsofsilsila.com. Very good. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you for being so intuitive in doing that. So yeah, that's where we were, and that's where they work when we're not there. They're in Sweden, so you can go take a look at some of the pictures on there. And I have, if you go to, by the way, Audrey, look, if you could, darling, if you could look this up because you're so on it. One of my group page, I don't know if it's a group page or a page. It's Exodus book, it's not Exodus reality. It's on Facebook. And if you go into that, let's see, I'll just do this little unorthodox. I'll do this right now as I'm sitting here on radio. And it's about the book. So it's Exodus. I've got maybe I changed it to Reality Adventures. I don't know. If you go to Exodus Reality Adventures, let's see if this is it. If it is, I took the book out of the header for some reason. I'm going to take one more look here and see. It's Exodus Reality Adventures. That's got to be it. But there's somewhere. If you go to my own photos on my own Facebook page, I've got a ton of photos of these things in Egypt if you want to go take a closer look at them. So there's things to see there. So there you go. Yeah, Audrey's teacher's pet. That's right. Damn it. Don't you forget it. And so she's the one who gives us an apple all the time. So thank you, Audrey, for looking at that. So all of this to say is that they're in my journal and other journals and other places I've written things down. I've got so much stuff. It's unbelievable. So I'm going to be drawing off of some of that stuff because I don't want to do a strictly political show here, although I will hit on it like I did today. I want to hit on some of these weird happenstances. And some of you, if you weren't here, if you recall, there was also a show I did, a post I put up of some photographs from the stepped pyramid and the Sebhed Court, which is right along the side of it at Saqqara, which is near kind of Memphis and Cairo and those areas off to the west. And it's where I caught a picture of something or somebody. And I wish I had a way to show this to you. I still have, Rocky and I started talking about the way I can use this software that I tap into, and then it's the software Rocky uses, so I can show you some pictures and I can refer to them, but I can't at the moment. So sorry about that. So I have to describe it as that I was looking up a picture of that court, which had these cove temples, if you remember me talking about this, and it was like the size of a soccer court, like an indoor soccer court, lined by temples that were all crumbled on this side, and a couple of them still standing that they've reconstructed on this side. And then the big step pyramid is right there, runs right up to the court. And there's all kinds of rubble that's been laid out as kind of an open-air museum. And as I was there, I sat on a stone way at the far end, and it would be the north end, and I was looking back, and that's where I had that vision I told you about, of seeing the priests all walking toward me with trays and things on them chanting, and I could smell the incense, and the light had changed, and the temples were all built, and the sun was coming down over the tops of them, and torches were lit, and things like this. And I heard the music. I smelled the incense. I kind of opened my eyes and woke up. And this is where I had some entity that, now, folks, you have to suspend your belief a little bit if you're skeptic. I was skeptic. I didn't think it was a vision at the time until a year later when I was back there. And Chris Conway, if you remember me talking about this story now, he came with us on that trip. He was the Scottish medium who was on the show, the British show Most Haunted, after Derek Acora was let go from the show. And they had, I think Chris did a couple of seasons on that. And he came with us, and he sat down there with me, and he says, something happened to you right here last year. And he started describing it. And he said, there was a man that was attached to you here. And he says, I'm talking to him right now. And he won't give me his name. He said he won't give me his name until he knows he can trust you. But that he's attached to you because you think the way he thinks. And all of this, and I've told this story before, so I'm not going to rehash the old story. Unless there's those of you who haven't heard it and I can tell you a little more detail, just let me know. And so as I'm there, I've got this attachment from this guy. And he said, And by the way, folks, I will tell you this. I always have that modicum of doubt, even with people I trust as much as Chris Conway, who I love this man dearly, and I know his gift is genuine. But it's like when I try to trust my own intuitions on things psychically, and I go, I can't trust him because I don't know if I'm just making that shit up in my head or what. I wonder that even of my good friends. Is he really seeing that, or is that what his imagination is telling him? Is this real stuff? You have all your doubts. But there's been lots of verification of this thing. I'll just leave it at that for now. And so that happened in 2013 when I had the vision. 2014 when I was back there with Chris. And we were back there again in 2015. But I was looking up the pictures to show a friend of mine who was traveling over there. And she wanted to just tap my knowledge on things to see while at Saqqara. And I was telling her about the Hebsed court. And I said, I had this experience here. And so I was digging through the pictures to show her. And I was going to point out in the photograph exactly where I had been sitting. And I had this picture that we had walked all the way almost to the other end of the court. And I turned back and I snapped a couple of shots of the court. So I'm looking on this picture, and way back there I see the stone, long stone I was sitting on when this vision happened. And as I'm scanning the background, I'm moving over, and it was a high-resolution picture. But this stuff, this stuff is 60 yards away from where I'm standing taking a picture. And emerging from, imagine you're standing in a courtyard, and along this line are these this wall with the old temples behind it. Well, I had stepped up a step, and I was behind that wall a little bit, shooting this way. So I wasn't looking straight down the wall. I was looking this way, and coming out from the edge of the wall, if you remember the picture, folks, and those of you who didn't, I'll describe it, was from about here down to the hip. You saw what looked like a topless man, very dark skin, shoulder, arm, down to his hand, down to the hip, and the hip kind of fading off at the bottom. So this picture, I looked at it, and immediately I got the thought of, and I don't jump to these conclusions, folks. This is my own picture. This is 6 years after it happened. And I look at that picture and I think, oh, wow, that looks an awful lot like pictures of like ghosts and Bigfoot and things like that are always just a little bit blurry, a little bit obscured. Oh, it's hiding, things like that. And I looked at it and I sent a chill up my back and I go, whoa, there's something there that shouldn't have been there. Because there aren't Egyptian men that walk around topless in Egypt, I can tell you that. And the ones that are there, generally in galabeas, the long robe that goes to the ground with the long sleeves. And so it seemed to be something to me. And when I had taken that picture, just a few seconds later, I stepped down and took a picture looking back that direction. And there was nobody there. And by the way, not populated tourist site, especially that day. There were the Guardians were there, which were the Egyptian guys. There were a couple of people walking around over there, getting camel rides and stuff. But there was hardly anybody there. And when we were in the Seb head court, there was nobody there. So it's interesting stuff. You don't know what to make of that. There's no way to look at that photo and wonder, was that it? So was that something I'm seeing there? So, and it's possible. I'll put the picture up later over on where I'll put it? Over on Streaming Talk Radio. I'll try to get some pictures up over there on my page. That's Rocky's and my website for all the stuff we do. StreamingTalkRadio.com. You can go take a look at that, by the way. You can see all our stuff over there. So that's undetermined as far as I'm concerned as to whether or not that's a real thing. What I need to do is actually do some kind of weird stuff while looking at that picture and see if I get any feedback from a weird spiritual source, if you will. So I'm going to look into that. I'm going to see what we can find out. And I haven't done it yet. But these are the kinds of things that have happened to me over there. and a lot more. So the handful of times I've been over there, and so things like that happen. And the reason I kind of want to bring this up tonight. Now this is nothing yet, so I can't tell you too much. But I haven't even been in the talks yet. But I've been approached to possibly do a paranormal show on the nationally syndicated network Odyssey, which is Mojo 50, owned by them. And I still have yet to talk with the guy about it, but Rocky got me lined up with him. It's the same place that Shut Up and Listen with Jeff Dougherty and Rocky Stucci on Sunday nights. And so what I've got to determine is, I'll ask you guys too. When you talk about something on radio and you do one show a week, you can get lost in the mess. You do 5 shows a week and you start to build a little bit of credibility out there. The problem is, and you got to think about something to talk about 5 days a week. And like I said, I got a million topics. I could talk about nothing for 2 hours. As I'm probably doing a little bit tonight. I'm just referencing things we talked about before. So there's a possibility that might be opening up, that I might be doing a show like that. I may or may not have a co-host with that. I don't know. We haven't even talked yet. So we're going to see what we can do. That's a possibility that's coming up. And as you know, by the way, Jeff Dougherty is coming up here on the 14th of August, which is 2 weeks from now. And we're going to do, Rocky and Jeff and I are going to do a live simulcast from a little place in Hastings, Minnesota, the Depot Bar and Grill. The first time I was there, it looks like a seedy little bar, biker bar, stuff like that, local bar. And yet it's a very haunted place. We've done a show there before, John Ward and Rocky and I. And so we're going to be doing that on Thursday, the 15th. And we're going to start at 8 p.m. in the evening instead of 11. It's a situation room thing. And then we're going to take Jeff down to Faribault, the place where John and Rocky and I did some filming and stuff like that. We're gonna look around. Not on that show, but that show will just be a single setting, so they have to join us for that. Thank you, Jeannie. I appreciate that. And welcome, by the way. What does my gut tug me toward? Brianna, you're asking me that question. Brianna Dunlap. How do you mean? On a given thing I was talking about, or in general? What's my gut tell me about? Give me a little specifics on what you want to know on that question. Yeah, Leslie, the Faribault Boys Farm was fascinating. And we got a few things there. So, on starting the show. Oh, my gut, it's good. I'll do it. I have my built-in reservations about things sometimes. Because I don't want to do things and waste my time or waste anybody else's time. I want to do something that's meaningful for people. People enjoy, that they come back to listen to. And it's like this show. I only do this because I think people enjoy it. The different topics I do. And so, and if I don't enjoy it, if it becomes a burden, I'm done. I'm out. I say I do these things because I love doing them and I enjoy them. It's that simple for me. Sean says, when you Google streaming talk radio, the site doesn't come up in the results. You should get that fixed. Oh, we're just putting it all back together, Sean. We're working on all that right now. We got an IT guy working on it with us, as well as just trying to get everything up. So thank you for pointing that out, though, Sean. That's going to be all pretty much. It's a little. We're hanging our cheese out a little early on this. We've had streaming talk radio for a long time, but we haven't done much with it. And so we're just getting that beefed up now. Thank you for pointing that out. Audrey is off and needs to get home before Rocky and I hit in about an hour and 7 minutes on the Rocky Stucci show. So, or the Situation Room. And so I encourage you all to come back for that. It's always fun. If you're not doing anything tonight and at 11 o'clock Central, midnight Eastern, this is technically the Wednesday show because it airs at midnight on the East Coast. Midnight, which is Wednesday morning. And so this is our Wednesday show playing tonight. And don't know what we're talking about yet, but we've got some ideas. We've got some bullet points all lined up. So we'll see where it goes. You know the drill. And yes, Audrey, thank you. Get some Meatball Army and Son of a Patriot gear at Streaming Talk Radio or at Etsy. If you go to Streaming Talk Radio, it's got everything there. Scroll down the page, you'll see the link. And all the Meatball Army stuff is on Son of a Patriot, which is my page at Etsy with all the shirt designs I do. I create them all. Just so you know, I'm not selling somebody else's shit. This is my stuff. So go over there and take a look. And if you see anything, I don't ask for donations on this show. I don't have a donate button, which a lot of podcasters do. But I do create stuff. And I say, if you want to come in, help support what we do here, go over to Streaming Talk Radio, click on the Son of a Patriot link, and find us and get some gear. I think you'll find something there cool that you'll enjoy. Lots of stuff over there. And by patriot, I don't mean chauvinistic. I don't mean xenophobic. What was the other one? Bigoted or racist, whatever it is, the new definitions for patriot. So now patriot is all those things. If you didn't know, according to Google. So Leslie says, Ron Phillips knew we were down for Unleashed Palooza this weekend. And he saw my husband walking across the parking lot with his Meatball Army hoodie. Fantastic. And I got to talk to Ron Phillips, too, about this whole radio thing. I haven't talked to anybody, so I could be talking out of the wrong side of my face, but it was shot across my bow. Hey, want to talk about doing a radio show over on Odyssey? So hopefully that will come about. And who knows what time slot, what anything. I don't know nothing yet. So I'll let you know as I know. I just thought I'd throw it out there. And if that doesn't happen, I'm still doing this. So 5 nights a week right here. So other things, there was something I wanted to bring up a little bit tonight. And this is just on my bullet pointed list. I don't know how many of you consider yourselves Christian. I know there's a few of you, and some of you I know by name. I don't consider myself Christian anymore. That's so hard for me to say because it's that whole process of unindoctrinating yourself. And it's not because I've turned atheist or I've started hating Jesus or anything like that. It's nothing like that. It's all the product of my studies and my research, having problems with certain things. If you all saw my series on King David and how I spelled out the apologetics that were obviously written in antiquity to try to make David look better than he was. And so we kind of subtitled that whole thing like the book I read, that whole thing the real history of a real king. King David was a real guy. There's no doubt about that. But he was an invented hero. He was somebody who was created apologetically for Israel. So Israel could have this hero. And it wasn't that he didn't do any heroic deeds. It's that most of his life as we see it, you can define, it's earmarked, it's full of earmarks of traditional of its day apologetics. Making the character look bigger and better and bolder and more heroic than he may have actually been. And so there were a lot of things about his story that just didn't ring true to the tales we were told in Sunday school or church. And it's kind of the same thing. That's my take on Christianity these days, is that I have my issues with Christianity. I have my issues with Jesus, if you will. I haven't thrown out the baby with the bathwater, but I've really backed off of it in recent years. It's become a thing where I question and I second guess. Mostly because of the things I study historically, anthropologically, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They smack of faith, but not of history. And I used to ask, if God really wants me to believe in him, Why does he make that belief based solely on a faith issue? If he's real and the creator of the universe, and he's created these places you're supposed to go to spend infinity with him after you die, or these places where you have infinity of separation from him, which has been called hell or the lake of fire, separation from God. There you go. In the mid-1700s, by the way, Sean Holt puts patriot also meant a factious disturber of government in the mid-1700s. I wonder if it was the British who came up with that definition. It'd be interesting to know, because they were certainly that to the British. Rocky says, hey, Rocky's in the room. Everybody shut up. If we get caught up chasing stories written by men and debating the authenticity of those stories designed to control men, it will rip us from our faith. Absolutely, Rocky. I totally agree with you. And so I question these things. I remember sitting one night when I was writing one of my books, the second book, and it was in the middle of it, kind of sitting in my chair and spinning very slowly, looking at the ceiling, thinking, these are the things that drove men mad, because you couldn't wrap your head around the stories. And Rocky, I hope that wasn't a criticism. You and I talk about these, so I think we talked about it even today, earlier in the day, when Rocky and I were talking about different things about show material and what are we going to talk about and all of that. I think I regaled him with this stuff. So you look at all that stuff and you have to ask yourselves the question. You have to ask, do I believe this or not? And so I've had to put a foot outside the circle. I haven't stepped totally out of it. Foot's outside. I need more proof. I'm an agnostic, not an atheist. So that's where I stand. And I brought that all up for a reason. That I'm trying to remember why I brought that up. But those are the things I question. And so I want to talk about those things with this show. I want to go into those things. Not tonight, but other times. I want to share my research with you and my experience with you. Like number 20, I'm not sure what you said there. But let me, I grabbed a few things. And the reason I brought this up, I asked you, I don't know if you're Christians out there or not, or if you're detached from that, you're something totally different, Jewish, Islamic, pagan, whatever you might be, Wiccan. You might not be Christian at all. But those of you who are, I was thinking about, where does religion and the paranormal merge? And I looked up a bunch of passages in the Bible. And they're mostly New Testament stuff. Because the people who have the most problems with this, are, of course, New Testament Christians. Or Pauline Christians. We won't even get into that. You know what I'm talking about if you listen to Jeff Dougherty. But I look at some verses like this. Matthew 14:26. When the disciples saw Jesus walking on the water, they were terrified. And they said, it's a ghost. And they cried out in fear. So there's a couple of things about that verse. First of all, did Jesus actually walk on water? If he's God, or has the power of God at his fingertips, if he's the magician like in the tarot, and he can harness that energy and that power, could a man walk on water if he has the ability to harness that energy? He certainly could if he's God. So there's that possibility right there. But it said that they were terrified, his disciples, and thought it was a ghost, which meant that's part of their lexicon. They already knew what a ghost was. It's not like, ghost, what the hell is that? They were already well in tune with this stuff. And even in the Old Testament, they were in tune with this stuff. When you had Saul going to the witch at Endor, and according to the story, calling up the ghost of the prophet Samuel, which, when we were talking about David, is probably part of the apologetic. That probably never happened. But if it did happen, even if it didn't, it's being talked about in the story. They're telling a ghost story as far back as David and Saul. Delaney says, the spirits in my house love it when I play music of them. The dance on film. You'll have to explain that one a little more. I'm not sure of whom are you playing music. So unless it's just ghostly music, I don't know what you're talking about. But there you go. Let's move on with this. In Luke 24, 37 through 40, it says, "But when they were startled and frightened and thought they saw a ghost or a spirit, and he said to them," Jesus, "Why are you troubled and why do you have doubts arise in your heart? See my hands and my feet, that it is I myself." And the hole, the nail holes, this is after the resurrection. "Touch me and see, for a spirit doesn't have flesh and bones, as you see that I have." And when he'd said this, he showed them his hands and feet. Mark 16:12. "After these things, he appeared in another form to two of them as they were walking into the country." That's probably the story of the road to Emmaus, where Jesus just appears in the middle of it, starts talking to him post crucifixion. 1 Timothy 4:1 says, "Now the Spirit expressly says that in later times some will depart from the faith by devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and teachings of demons." Now that's the fear verse that we were given. You don't believe in this stuff because it's stuff of the devil. And if you believe that stuff, you're going to be falling into the trick of the devil. You meant Scotty, like Bobby Blue Bland and Marvin Gaye. I played their song Sunday. That's pretty cool. Do you know, I'm going to rabbit trail here, as I'm wont to do. I once had a psychic, somebody I trust. And there's a very small handful of psychics that I trust because, when I was doing the paranormal stuff, when I was the editor-in-chief of the Ghost Hunters, Taps Paramagazine, and I go do all these events with them, you always run into somebody at the bar who's there at the event, and they're a bit in their cups, and they get a little lit, and they look at you and go, "I'm psychic." And you're like, "Oh, really? Well, okay, thank you." And you just want to go, "Bullshit." It goes in my bullshit can. My metaphoric bullshit can that's dragging on a chain to my heel, my ankle, because I hear that all the time. And you just throw it in the bullshit can. Yeah, you're about as psychic as, my toenail clipper. So why is that on my desk? I don't know. Somebody put that there. So, I'm trying to remember, keep my train of thought here where I was. So I would get that all the time. I would have people say they were psychic and so on. And I have a psychic person that's a friend of mine. Did some work for her out in Washington State a couple of years ago. And we were talking on the phone once. And she's genuine psychic, that genuine material stuff. Because she's not the big, bold, bright advertised, but I was telling her about my love of, because of that hat back there hanging on the wall. That's the replica of Humphrey Bogart's hat from the movie Casablanca that I've had for years. And I was talking to her about Humphrey Bogart. I said, if there was anybody that's passed on from the golden screen era, I'd love to talk to Humphrey Bogart. And I wasn't asking her, but, it kind of came and she said, well, she says, I can see if I can connect with him. I said, can you do that? And of course, stupidly asked, can you do that? Well, if a medium is real and they can really connect with dead people, why can't they connect with famous dead people too? It's just nonsense to think they can't if the gift is real to begin with. So, yeah, you're right, Delaney. True psychics don't go out there announcing it. I don't see much about her. I helped her design a logo that she put on business cards and her website, but she's not out there promoting herself. You don't see her at events and stuff like that. She's a quiet psychic. And so I can't remember if it was the same night or it was later. I think it was at the same point, same conversation. She says, I've connected with Humphrey Bogart. She said, and he says he heard what you said, and he appreciates it. And it was nothing mind-blowing, Because if you weren't a believer in this stuff, you just go, yeah, whatever, bullshit can. But I believe in her and her gift and her credibility as a quiet psychic. And she said, well, I've connected with him here. And he says, thanks. He appreciates that and that he sees you there. And said something to me about, I asked a couple of questions because I said, well, if this is really him, I'm going to ask some questions. And I think he talked about having some drinks. Things were different over there than what people think over there, other side. And then when he left, he said something like, it was like saying, hey, stay groovy, stay cool. But he didn't use those. It was a different terminology he was using. Stay real kind of thing, something like that. And so there was nothing there that would prove to me that she actually connected with Humphrey Bogart. And it only lasted a few minutes. But I thought that that was very interesting. That you can connect with those people. It's like I had a psychic connect with my aunt and my grandfather and the guy that was my mentor when I was a kid. All three of these people in one sitting. Now, you may know them. Michael and Marty Perry. P-A-R-I or R-R-I, or I don't think it's a Y at the end. And they used to do some of the events, the Ghost Hunters events. And they still do stuff. And Michael is British. He does the reading as a psychic. And his wife will sit with headset on, quieting, and she'll draw pictures. And many times and I don't remember their site, or I'd give it out to you. They're on Facebook. Michael and Marty, M-A-R-T-I, Perry, P-A-R-Y, P-A-R-R-I. I can't remember how to spell it. But they got that, Delaney. We'll talk. They do these psychic readings. Now, I was at an event with them, a darkness radio event back 10 years ago. And we were at Waverly Hills Sanatorium and in Kentucky there. And I said, I want to get a reading from you guys. I want to see what this is about. And they didn't know me very well. They had met me before, I think. I didn't know them well. And so we went up to their room. We did the reading. They don't know anything about my history. And I started to say, well, I kind of like to connect with them. He said, don't even tell me. He says, don't even tell me. I don't want to know. Let's just see who comes up. And I remember he starts talking and he says, he says, there's a woman, short, she's kind of redheaded. She's jumping up and down. And he says, she's saying it's Sandy. It's Sandy. And Marty takes the headset off and she goes, no. She's saying, it's Andy. It's Andy, not it's Sandy. And Andy was my aunt who had passed away about 15 years earlier. And that's it. She was short. She was redheaded. All of that. And so she says, wait. She tells Michael. And he says, all right, darling. He says, all right, darling. And son, Love, he was calling her. He says, I hear you. She's saying this. She's saying this. Oh, she's gone. She said she had to go get somebody. And he said, this room is just filled with people that want to talk to you. I said, wow. Who? I was fascinated by it. And he goes, oh, she's back. And then he described somebody else. He's this short gentleman. He's got like a shock of white hair over his forehead. Very tan skinned, he said. I said, I know who that is. And he said he's patting his chest and he's going, I was the money. Which is funny if you've heard me talk about him. I had a Jewish grandfather. He was my mom's stepdad. After World War II, he married my mom's mother. My mom was already 4 or 5 years old. And he was the grandfather I grew up with my whole life, who passed away in 95 at age 78. And he was Jewish. He was stereotypical Jewish. He was Hungarian Jewish. He didn't always talk like this, but his whole family did that side. And here he is going, I was the money, which was so funny because it's a stereotypically Jewish thing to say, I was the money. Oy. But at the same time, he's the reason we didn't fall into poverty when I was a kid. Because my mom, his stepdaughter, he helped keep us afloat. My mom had a job as a waitress. Imagine my mom's only 18 years older than I am. So imagine when I'm 10, she's 28 years old. And at that time, she had my older brother, who was a year and a half older, and my younger sister was 5 years younger. And she was a single mom working as a waitress for, I remember at the time, $2 an hour plus tips. But you're talking late 1960s, early 1970s. So I missed the Cary Grant. Cary Grant passed away in the hotel as well as a few others. Which hotel? I missed something. Last August, I had to travel to Davenport, Iowa for work. My employer put us up in the historic Black Hawk Hotel. All 6 of us that stayed in the hotel had stories to tell after the first night. Sean, I'm going to have to talk to you. I want to hear some of your stories. And apparently Cary Grant had passed away in the hotel, as well as a few others. That's very interesting. So my grandfather, Michael Perry, he comes, I'm the money, he says. And then they go, and he says, somebody else is here for you that wants to talk to you. He said, gentlemen, he said, I get William. Now, let me tell you a little story, folks. There was a guy, because I didn't have a dad in the home. I had this man I met when I was 11. He was 60. He was a stonemason, a bricklayer, tough old guy. 60 is nothing. I'm a year and a half from 60, so I'm almost the age he was. Year and a half, I'll be 60. Well, I met him when he was 60. He was a stonemason, a bricklayer, all of that. And he invited me to church. He introduced me to the faith I was in for many years. And he was a dyed-in-the-wool Christian, a Baptist, all of these things. And he was known because he had this pickup truck, an old Dodge, and he put a wooden topper that he built for it, just a square plywood and 2x4s topper, painted it, and he painted Bible verses all over it. He actually had me do that for him. John 3:16 and other verses, things like that. So as I'm talking to Michael and Marty Perry, he said you'll know it's really him because he's holding up car keys or something, truck keys, and that would be an identifier for you. And while he's saying that, his wife was drawing little doodles, and she wrote out John 3:16, stuff like that. And they wouldn't have known this guy from Adam, especially his relationship to me. And he says he just wants you to know it's different over here than he thought it would be. And he's happy, and he's this and that, and this and that, and the other thing. And so this is interesting. Some of the psychics that I know and trust are the ones that have come up with things that I found to be trustworthy information. And they withstand the test of scrutiny. They withstand the test of critical thinking. Although they may not withstand the test of science and skepticism. I say that there are 2 different kinds of skeptics, and you've heard me say this before. There are the big S skeptics and the small s skeptics. The big S skeptic, capital S skeptic, is the skeptic who is no, it isn't. No, it doesn't. No, it ain't. That didn't happen. No way. I deny. That stuff doesn't exist. Science. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidences. I agree with that. But these are the things they say. These are your Michael Shermer types. Well, until recent years. Michael Shermer, if you know who he is, head of the Skeptics of America or something like that. Very well known, very good man. Wrote books like Why Do Good People Believe Weird Things? Stuff like that. But he also had his own paranormal experience, which shocked a lot of people. And he wrote about it. He says, I've been skeptical of stuff, but I had my own thing with his father and stuff like that. And so he doesn't discount it as much anymore. But that was the big S skeptic, the deniers. Then you have the small s skeptic. The small s skeptic says, I don't buy it. I don't get it. But show me. Show me what you got. I'm teachable. Show me your evidence. I want to see it. I could appropriate that if you show me that it's worth appropriating. And I call those the small s skeptic, which is what I am. And a lot of people I know, Rocky is a small s skeptic. It's because we saw Randy. Is Randy still alive? Really? James Randi? Yeah, what a dope. I'm sorry. I don't pass off people like that. I know he has his good points and all of that. But he never meant to pay anybody. He's had so much proof offered to him of the paranormal, of the spiritual, and so on. Just doesn't want to accept it. He keeps changing his criteria. So I shouldn't say he's a dope. He's a dope. That idea is a dopey idea. There you go. So all of these things I'm talking about, these different psychics, and I may have lost my train of thought there, but all of this stuff is stuff that has proven to me, because I'm a small s skeptic who asks questions, I will ask the question, give me your answer. And frankly, I've done that with God too. I've asked God, throw me a bone. Show me what you got. You know where I am. I know there's a time. It was before I knew Rainey, before I met Rainey. 2003 was the last time I went to church ever, other than weddings and stuff like that. And you've heard this story before if you're a follower of me. I'm just repeating it tonight because of the topic, but I was at church. I asked God, familiar church. All my friends were there from that church. For years, I had been friends with that community. I had taught in that church. I had led men's ministries in that church for guys in troubled marriages and troubled relationships. I led a small group in men's ministries. And so I knew people there. The pastor was a dear friend of mine, John Larson. I always called him Parson Larson. And even after I left and I had troubles with my faith, I talked to him about a year ago was the last I talked to him. And we're still friends. He says, how you doing, Scotty? He says, maybe you're right. He says, we built a ministry on this, this, and this. You might be right. Well, anyway, I went back to that church, of course. And that morning I said, God, I haven't darkened the door of a church in a couple of years. Not that church does anything. By the way, folks, I'll tell you what I told my youth group back then when I was a youth pastor. And if you go to church and you're a Christian, I'm going to tell you this, just because I think it's great and I think it's still accurate. I would tell the kids, I once taught a lesson series to them on what does it mean to be a Christian? And I entitled the whole thing, Why Am I a Christian? I said, you go to this church, your parents go to this church. I said, but why are you a Christian? Why are you a Christian? I would ask them. And I said, everybody, I said, go around the room. Tell me why you're a Christian. I got weird answer. Well, because we've always gone to church here. I went, thank you for playing. Next. Well, because my parents are Christians. Thank you for playing. Next. And I went through all these things. I said, did you know that Christianity, being a follower of Christ, being part of that faith, is something you are supposed to appropriate? And you can only appropriate when you put cognitive, conscious action to it. I said, going to church and saying you're a Christian is as efficacious as saying, I went out and stood in my garage, so therefore I'm a car. Going to church doesn't mean a damn thing. It's what you appropriate. Now, if you were listening to Jeff's show, and where I am too pretty much, that's indoctrination as well. You have to unindoctrinate yourself. Listen to Jeff on that stuff. I could mimic Jeff so much, and I don't because I don't want to mimic Jeff. And he does a hell of a lot of research on this. Radio is his full-time job, and he's got the time to do his research. That's why we only hit on these things lightly. So I'll never walk into a non-denominational church again, nor a Baptist, or never even a Catholic. I'd be a liar. Well, walking in or practicing. Yeah, I won't practice again anymore. I've got too many questions. But at that time was when I said to God, I said, God, throw me a bone. Show me something. I said, I'm doubting. And I've had this since I was 11 years old. I've been in this faith. And this was about 15 years ago, 16 years ago, just before Rainey came into my life, 2003. And so I was 43 years old. And I said, throw me a bone, show me something. And I went into the service that morning, into the class where I knew everybody, and everything was off. Everybody I expected to see wasn't there. The teacher, my pastor was even gone out of town. The song service, which I loved, was preempted for a church business meeting. As was the class that I was part of with all my friends my age. And I remember, and you heard me, I just talked with somebody about this, probably Rocky about this, or maybe Jeff, not long ago. But I remember sitting in church, and my friends were next to me, my closest friends in the church. And he was down there with the kids in between, and his wife was next to me. And my kids were here. I brought them with. And I just sat there, and I started to shed a tear. I had my eyes closed. Because all of this culminated in that moment where I realized I just came here, nothing I asked for was there. Not that I was demanding of God that God had to do anything. If God exists, who's he? It's like, oh, who am I that to do? Oh, Scotty Roberts asked me to show him and throw him a bone. What the fuck, dude? Yeah, I'm sorry. God probably wouldn't say what the fuck. But God did say fuck in the Bible. And I can prove it in ancient Hebrew. But anyway. God's like, what do I got to show you a bone for? Sorry, Macabre. Jeff Dougherty I'm talking about. I'm sorry about that. Jeff Dougherty, the Christian whistleblower. That's who I'm meaning over there. Sorry about that. Sterling, Macabre. I say fuck all the time. We just can't say it on Rocky's show. We can during the break sometimes. Fuck is one of my favorite words. But words, it's a verb, an action verb. It's also it's a pronoun. It's a noun. It's a preposition. It's an adjective, an adverb. It's got all the qualities you need to do. So, TT, how you doing? Good to see you. Scott Dowers, good to see you as well. So I imagine God sitting there saying, what, who are you? Who are you to ask of me? If God is actually who he says he is, and he's great and he's so far above us, as even you look at Isaiah 55, how much higher are my ways than your ways and my thoughts than your thoughts, says God in the Old Testament. This is what we were taught, by the way. This is what we were indoctrinated into. So I figure I'm asking God to throw me a bone, and it's a 50-50. Either he's going to do it, or he's going to say, who the hell are you to ask me that? So I'm sitting in church, and I'm contemplating that things just aren't. I felt I was sincerely, honestly, from my heart, asking for God to show me something. God, if you are there, and you are real, and this is where I need to be, show me. Throw me a bone. I need something. And nothing was there. And so I sat there, and I was trying to hold back some tears. Just quiet. And I had my eyes closed. And my friend's wife sitting next to me, who I might add was hot. So I'll just leave that at that. You know, it doesn't matter for the story. It's just my memory. And she reaches over, and I've got my hand on my knee or something. She touches my hand lightly, and she leans over and she mouths to me because the service is going on. She says, "Are you okay?" And I looked at her and I said, if you've heard this story before, you know what I said. I said, I got to go. She looked at me kind of puzzled, and I stood up quietly, walked out with my kids. We were near the back, so I wasn't being disruptive. And so that was the time I threw God a bone, and I felt like I walked away without that being given. That's not the whole reason I walked away from my faith. I had walked away before that. Maybe I was prepared for not getting an answer. Maybe those of you who disagree with this whole unindoctrinate yourself and think that, everybody needs to be there religiously, spiritually, you would see the efficacy in giving in. I have problems with that. I have a big problem on an intellectual level, on a historical level, on a epistemological level, on a gnosis level of believing what I used to believe about God, about Jesus, and so on. Even though I have a tough time turning away from that because that was ingrained in me, indoctrinated in me. So that's where I am on all that stuff. And I want to talk more and more about that kind of thing, why we get there, why I'm there. I don't want to, in upcoming series that I'm going to do on this show, I don't want to degrade the Bible for the sake of degrading the Bible or Christianity or Abrahamic religion of any kind. That's not my purpose. My purpose is going to be, what do we think we know? And what is there that we should look at to try to determine? And I'll do to the positive and I'll do to the negative, the pro and the con. It's like I've talked about with Pontius Pilate and the cornerstone they found. First time they ever found that. And by the way, I just got my YouTube announcement. If you're not getting it, let us know. If you haven't hit that little bell over on Rocky's page or my page, do that. So I just got the announcement that 30 minutes from now is when we're going to start the Situation Room. And so I'm going to wrap this up here pretty quick. The show about nothing, about going nowhere tonight. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've drawn something from it. And I want to present information that is valuable to you. Not only valuable on a historical or anthropological level, making those things fun, by the way, fun and exciting to talk about, but also the weird, the supernatural, all those things that make us question, make our eyebrows go up at night. All those stories, I've got so many stories to tell you. So many things I want to share with you. And that's what I want to do here. And so here's what I'm going to do. For now, I'm going to thank you for listening to me. I've been blethering for an hour and a half about nothing, which Rocky and I do pretty well too. So maybe in a half hour from now, you hear us do a whole hell of a lot of talking about nothing. But we'll leave you with something. Hopefully I'm still leaving you with something. So Shut Up, never heard of him. Oh, of Jeffrey? You got to go check him out. Check him out, Sterling. Macabre, you got to go find him. Jeffrey Dougherty. He's who I do the on Thursday nights, we do the Consequential Rapscallions, Jeffrey Dougherty and I. We've been doing that for a year and a half, almost 2 years. The Consequential Rapscallions, I do declare. And we've had a few weeks where Jeff's been unavailable, but he just asked me last night. He says, we doing Rapscallions this Thursday? And I said, absolutely. So you'll catch us on Jeffrey's channel for the Consequential Rapscallions. You'll catch me here every night this week, Monday through Friday, except last night, but that's gone. That's in the past, so no longer matters. So every night this week, I'm going to do tarot readings. Remember I said I was going to do those on Fridays? I might do a different night for that. I was actually talking with Rocky about that. He says, maybe, people are out on Fridays. Maybe they want to catch you doing these tarot readings on a different night. You guys suggest to me. Let me know what you think. We might do that on a different night. Jeannie Griffin, I see your asterisk Scotty. I don't know if you sent me an email today, by the way, Jeannie. I did see your messages. I think I responded to them. If I didn't, slap me upside the head because I may have seen it in passing and didn't get a chance to respond to you. But yeah, we got to talk and get our calendars together. Let's see. There you go. Melinda, bought my first Bible last April from a bookstore. Lady would sell me one. Unless I had a membership. And I had to tell her what church I went to. I pointed to my heart and said, my church is here, bitch. Give me the Bible. Oh, man. Some lady was going to refuse to sell you a Bible unless you had a church membership? What you think you were going to do? Use it as toilet paper or something? Biatch, says Melinda. Exactly. So, yeah, my God, it's my religion's right here, bitch. So, how much glyphosate is really in your beer? Health Ranger, test 26 popular beers in Science Lab to reveal surprising answer. Mike Adams with Natural News. Well, that's fantastic, Lou. Thank you. That fit right into the conversation. I appreciate that. All right, guys. I think if you had a question in there, I missed it. I'm awful sorry. I missed it. I want to thank you for being here. Sean Holt, I just have to call you out personally because you're my friend. I'm so glad you're here. It's so fun. I don't see many of my old friends that show up in the chat room, even though from time to time some say, hey, we listen. So I'm so glad to have you here. I appreciate that, Sean. Good to see you, brother. And everybody else who's here, see you in the Situation Room, says Leslie. Yes, you will. And a little less than a half hour now. Let's give ourselves a half hour. I'm going to go, I don't know, take a couple shots of scotch before the Situation Room starts. That'll get us online, I think. Clear up my head anyway. It's the end of the day. And so I thank you for being here, giving me your time. Go see my Son of a Patriot. It's over at streamingtalkradio.com. You can find the link to my website, scottallenroberts.com. Find the link to Son of a Patriot there. Find links to Rocky, Professor Bauer, everybody's show, Jeff Dougherty's show. By the way, Macabre, if you want to see Jeff Dougherty's show, you can go find Streaming Talk Radio. You can click on his links there. TT, thanks a lot. Your looks like one of the Musketeers. Why, thank you. You know what I did? I used that shampoo that Rocky talks about. It's supposed to wash out all the gray. I started using it about a month ago. Now, I'll be honest with you. This feels too dark for me. So I'm going to stop for a while. I got to let some of the gray grow back out. I thought I'll try that because I was feeling like I feel old. I felt miserable. So I'm looking old. So let's brush that up a little bit. So I put a little bit in here and a little bit in here. And it's just a shampoo. And it darkened things up a bit. And this is how I always used to wear it. And I'd have the full beard. But it was white. So now it's a little darker. This is actually my color it used to be when I was younger. So it's kind of nice to have that. Even my wife was like, oh, hey, how you doing? So that's good. That always works for me. So thank you, though, for noticing. I appreciate that. And how can you not notice? It's such a dramatic change if you haven't seen me in a few weeks. It was gradual over the last few weeks, but there it is. I appreciate it. Vanity, all is vanity, saith the preacher. So Lola likes the whitey Scotty. Racist. But thank you. Thank you, Lola. I know what you mean. I appreciate that. Let's see. Susie Q, thank you. Everybody, thank you. I'm just going to read through. I'm sure you wife love. I do wife love. I wife love as often as I can. So let's see. Yeah, Just for Men commercial. What I got to do first is lose all the old man fat and wrinkles to be just for, well, wrinkles are okay. I got good wrinkles. I'm not wrinkly. I'm just out of shape. I need to muscle up. Look at, not bulk up. I'd like to tone up. Oh, and by the way, I got to show you before you go. My daughters gave me tattoos. Boom! Look at that. I got Rocky Stucci tattoos now. I said, Rocky, I showed him these on the chat this morning. And I said, Rocky, look, I got tattoos just like you. And so little Ellery, my 4-year-old, gave me those. So there you go. 10 push-ups a day, Brianna. Yeah, I need to do more than that. I need to do cardio stuff to lose. I got to burn fat. So there you go. I've been saying that for 20 years. And I go up and down, up and down, up and down. Roller coaster. Enough of that. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. Thanks for being here. Be back in now 22 minutes for the Situation Room with Rocky Stucci and me. Talk to you more over there. Thanks for coming. Thank you for giving me your time I love you guys. That means a hell of a lot to me that you would be here and give me your time and listen and contribute and all of that. We'll see you again tomorrow night. Talk to you soon. Bye.